Yo, Shortbox Nation, this is Botter, and I'm here to tell you right now that con season starts early this year with the return of Northeast Florida's premier anime, comic book, and sci-fi event, Collective Con. That's right, Northeast Florida's largest pop culture convention returns for its 10th year on March 8th through the 10th at the Prime Osborne Center in Jacksonville, Florida. 10 years of Collective Con, they're pulling all the stops out to make sure this is a can't-miss event. And the guest list they got going, don't even get me started on the guest list. I mean, they've got A-list celebrity guests and voice actors from some of your favorite movies, anime, and video games like Elijah Wood and Sean Ashton, Ray Park, Trisha Helfer, Ross Marquand, Max Middleman, and Bo-Katan herself will be there, Katie Sackhoff. Tell me what other convention is giving you the opportunity to meet Frodo and Sam from Lord of the Rings, Darth Maul, and One Punch Man all under the same roof. Oh my goodness. Only at Collective Con. And if you're looking to get some of your favorite comics signed, or if you want to get an original sketch from some of the best comic artists in the world, well, you're in luck, because there'll be plenty of comic and creator guests there, like DC comic artist extraordinaire Clay Mann, Harvey Award-nominated illustrator John Taylor Christopher, Marvel and DC cover artist Chris Stevens, and acclaimed Star Wars author Timothy Zahn. They'll all be at Collective Con this year. And if you're looking to bring the family, or if you want to make a weekend out of it, you're in luck, because there'll be so much going on at Collective Con that weekend in the form of vendors, fan panels, video game tournaments, cosplay contests, after parties, and a bunch of fan events. You can purchase single and 3-day weekend passes now using the link in this episode's show notes, or by going to collectivecon.com to book your tickets and hotel. Buy your tickets now, and I'll see you at Collective Con, March 8th through the 10th. Now let's start the show.
You go on. That's who you belong with. He's one of your kind. I'll see you again. I promise.
Yo, Mandalorian fans, Star Wars nerds, and returning friends, greetings. And for our first-time listeners, new to the show, welcome to Shortbox Podcast, your soon-to-be favorite pop culture and comic book podcast. I'm your host, Botter Milligan, and this is the 8th and final installment of our Mandalorian Season 2 recap and commentary series. We'll be covering the season finale, Episode 8, Chapter 16, The Rescue. So consider this your spoiler warning for the rest of the episode. We'll be discussing important plot points and other Easter eggs going forward. Joining me today is my panel of co-hosts who've been eagerly awaiting this episode as much, if not more, than I have. Two of them are here with me in the Shortbox studio. Allow me to introduce Miss Blythe Brumleaf.
Hola.
With the very appropriate glittery Baby Yoda shirt.
Homage.
And my right-hand man, Cesar Cordero, is here in the building with us.
How's it going, guys? It's me, Lando. I bet you thought I wouldn't make a return.
And last but not least, calling in from Moff Gideon's Imperial Cruiser himself is our favorite Star Wars know-it-all, Mr. Lars Lundquist.
McClunky, my dudes.
McClunky, you're looking sexy.
Oh man, this is going to be a good one. Before we get into the main event, there's a group of awesome supporters who play a major role in helping us maintain and grow this podcast that I'd like to acknowledge first. Starting with the comic shop Gotham City Limit, a proud sponsor of the show and responsible for keeping this and our previous 7 Mando episodes commercial free. Gotham City Limit is Jacksonville's premier place for comics, toys, collectibles, and more. If you live in Jax or ever find yourself passing through the city, stop by the shop on Southside Boulevard and tell Ben the Shortbox sent you. Lastly, this episode is made possible in part by donations from our Patreon subscribers. Their contributions help us pay for equipment and other necessary podcast bills that ensure the continued productions of episodes like the one you're enjoying now. So if you're interested in supporting the show and earning our eternal gratitude and some awesome rewards along the way, visit patreon.com/theshortbox to become a patron or click the link in this episode's description. I want to give a special shout out, man. I want to give a shout out, first of all, to the Wait For It podcast. The host, Phil and Eric, had me on to talk about the season finale and The Mandalorian on their show, which should be available at the same time as this one. So find that episode and the Wait For It podcast on your favorite podcast app now. And I want to give a special thank you to a listener of ours, Mr. John Arvin. He sent us a really nice Chewbacca holiday card.
Thanks, John.
And it reads, "It's beginning to Wookiee a lot like Christmas."
No, man,
Very
it's
nice.
beginning to Wookiee lot like Christmas.
Oh, man, my bad. I read it
point.
wrong. Reading's not my strong suit, as you guys can tell.
Seriously, if you want to give to the Patreon, it's worth it just to get Botter that education.
I need it,
For
man.
just $10 more a day, folks, you can help support a Botter Milligan $20 more a day, folks. You can $50 more a day, folks. You can. I like how you looked at me like not offended, like you were like, bro, keep going higher with the money. That's what you need to do.
Let me make these tiers. So I want to, well, like I said, a shout out to Phil and Eric with the Wait For It podcast. A shout out for John Arvin for the nice holiday card. Let's give it up one more time for our sponsor and patrons and get started on analyzing the season finale of The Mandalorian, starting with the credits. This episode is written and produced by Jon Favreau and directed by Peyton Reed, who also directed episode 2, chapter 10 of this season, aka the Frog Lady episode. And this episode includes a much larger cast list than usual, so here it goes. This week's episode stars Omid Abtahi as Dr. Pershing, Tamora Morrison as Boba Fett, Gina Carano as Cara Dune, Mercedes Varnado as Koska Reeves, Katie Sackhoff as Bo-Katan Kryze, Ming-Na Wen as Fennec Shand, Giancarlo Esposito as Moff Gideon, and last but not least, Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker. High-level plot-wise, in this episode, the Mandalorian and his allies attempt a daring rescue, then finds the location of Moff Gideon and the captured Grogu with the help of Boba Fett, Fennec, Bo-Katan, and her Lieutenant Koska Reeves. A hard-fought battle ends with a surprising revelation and changes for everyone involved. Before Blythe kicks us off, I would like to formally pay our respect and honor for the passing of Jeremy Bulloch. For those unaware, he's the actor who originally portrayed Boba Fett in the first Star Wars trilogy. He transitioned from this life on Thursday at the age of 75. And I was really happy to see a lot of positive and heartfelt sentiments being shared across social media about Mr. Bulloch. I know, some of his colleagues like Mark Hamill had said some really nice words about him, as well as Daniel Logan, the actor who played, child Boba Fett in episode 2 of the Attack of the Clones.
But I think there was initial confusion because it happened right before the episode dropped. So people were kind of unsure of who exactly they were talking about. Was it in the show character or the actual actor? So I think that there was a little bit a level of confusion.
I think I'll try to be positive because it's the man's memory, in the sense that I think a lot of that confusion came from the but now, he wasn't really Boba Fett. Let's tape over his voice with some other guy that sounds a lot like what we're trying to do in the prequels. And either way, Jeremy Bulloch's legacy is important because we don't get the show we are reviewing without his performance. It's the guy, like you said, lived, how'd you say, 75 years?
Yeah.
Wow. Big bucket of win for that guy. And he slipped from this world into legend. And I don't think anybody will forget him. He's definitely going to be missed.
Well said. Lars, you want to chime in if anything about Jeremy Bulloch?
No, I mean, I've never heard anything bad about him. People that have met him at meet and greets and Comic-Cons and Star Wars Celebration just heard he was a really nice, personable guy. So, it's definitely sad,
Yeah. So this episode, like I said, I want to dedicate this to Mr. Jeremy Bulloch for the reasons that Cesar mentioned.
Pour one out for Bulloch, man.
Absolutely.
Pour one out.
Blythe, will you help us recap the big moments from this episode? In your opinion, what are the top 3 big moments and revelations we got?
Okay, so for the first one, I kind of want to go back to last week's episode because in the context of this entire season of what they have to wrap up in this last episode, I thought last week's episode after the initial watch was a little weak just because I felt like most of that material could have been placed at any point in the season. And so at the ending of that episode, it was like, wow, we really have to jump quickly into all of these storylines to wrap it up quickly, and how can they do that in one simple episode? And they did it. So for me, it was one of those situations where they nailed it. Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, that was a damn near perfect episode and wrapped up a lot of storylines while also introducing new storylines into the show. One of those being when the Boba and Din walking into the cantina to meet up with Bo-Katan, and I was like, oh shit, here we go, because they finally got to the point where Mando is saying, or Din is saying, help me rescue the child and I'll do whatever you want. So that was one of the first things that was sort of setting up either initially for this episode or for future seasons to come. And then the next one is kind of selfish for me, but it was almost, female empowerment done right for this episode. And I don't think you can talk about that without talking about sort of the missteps that Disney has done in the past with Avengers, like their Endgame with all the females that are joining up, sort of that girl power scene that just felt a little cringy to me.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, man, I thought they did that right, too, where it was not like, by the way, we're women and this is how we do it. It was just like, they all happen to be there.
But they all happen to be in the same scene. So it was just kind of like, if they were just more spread out, like more males mixed in. It just felt a little
They were dead
to me.
What do you want, Blythe? They just Hulk snapped them back to life.
But it was one of those moments where you're watching the movie, and as soon as you see it, it's like, okay, I know exactly what's going on here. Like you're trying to play to the female crowd, and it's like you'll bite a little bit, but not really. Another moment that I can sort of point to is in Lion King, whenever Beyonce is the voice of Nala, and she's like, "Come on, my lionesses," and that's just such a cringy line. And it was just, come on, we can do female empowerment right without it being, just, I guess, it's sticking out like a sore thumb. And in this episode, they did that. To the point where I didn't even notice it, where the 4 women are leading the charge, going onto Moff Gideon's ship. And I didn't notice that it was 4 women leading the charge until after the fact. They're the one leading the battle. They're the ones running in and catching the fire. So to me, that was a really standout moment. And then also, as a little side note, all 4 of those actresses are over 40 years old, which in respects to Hollywood, like that's very rare. So I thought that the just female leadership, female role models, I'll use quotes, role models in that regard, for this whole season has been really well done, where it doesn't feel forced, for lack of a better word. And then the third one is Gideon sowing the seeds of contempt between Din and Bo-Katan. That was one of the moments where you could see him questioning about, who's going to win the Darksaber, the methods of how you have to get the Darksaber, future battles that may happen between Din and Bo-Katan. I thought that was a little interesting while he's, sort of the sideline referee pointing out those moments. And I thought that was really standout. Should set up future seasons.
Just for kind of selfish reasons, I'm glad that you didn't pick like the most obvious one.
Well, I mean, we're going to get into that.
Absolutely. I'll say
we will.
I'll say my 2 kind of selfish, personal, like kind of big moments outside of some of the more obvious ones. Seeing the Dark Troopers in action, like they lived up to kind of like the buildup that they had. So seeing them like really in action was a lot of fun.
I agree. And
also the Moff Gideon versus Mando fight. Once again, like I just thought that choreography was awesome. Getting to see the Darksaber, which I feel like has been like a tease this entire season. Seeing that in action finally was a lot of fun too. Lars, what about Easter eggs and other cool findings? So was this one chock full of them? Was there any that stood out to you? Yo, this is Botter. Sorry for interrupting this episode, but I'll keep it brief. I wanted to let you know about a massive sale we have going on over at the Shortbox store on all of our merchandise and apparel. That's theshortboxstore.bigcartel.com. You can now save 20% off your entire order using the discount code YOO, Y-O-O. So if you've been waiting for the right time to finally buy that gauntlet snapback, or if you ever wanted to buy any of the shirts you see me wear on the podcast, well, now's your chance to get them for a steal. We still have a few sizes left of everything, but they won't last long, and once they're gone, they are gone. And then I mentioned that all of our apparel is screen printed on high quality material. None of that heat transfer or direct to garment stuff. Our shirts are some of the most comfortable ones you'll ever wear, and the hats look even better in person. So wear your support for the Shortbox Nation proudly, knowing that you're going to look damn good doing it. Get to theshortboxstore.bigcartel.com as soon as you can, and don't forget to use that discount code YOO, Y-O-O, to save 20% off your entire order. All of this information can be found in this episode's show notes if you want to get there faster. Thanks for not pressing fast forward. Now back to the show.
I mean, sort of mostly the obvious stuff. But then, I mean, like when they went to go meet up with Bo-Katan, and you saw the Gauntlet fighter, which is like a Mandalorian like fighter ship that she, must have been her ship. I think we might have seen it before in the episode when they first met up. What else? The McClunky part at the end of the post-credit scene, when they put A New Hope on Disney Plus, they added the McClunky line to Greedo's death scene, and it was like controversial, and some people thought that McClunky was supposedly his his ally that he was calling for, but then I think it was later used or said that it was like a curse word, McClunky, in Huttese or something. So that was sort of cool. Bib said that whenever he was about to get mowed down, and then the other Easter eggs are sort of like the obvious stuff. One thing that I wanted to point out that I thought was an interesting plot point, I guess they probably just did it to sew some things up, was they didn't put Boba and Luke in the same room. Maybe not necessarily a Easter egg, but those guys would have some words to talk,
That's a good catch. Speaking of like retroactive additions, did anyone else notice that there was, when they did the recap in the intro, like you had pointed out, did they add a scream to Grogu as he's being, taken away by the Dark Troopers? I don't remember that from the actual episode when it happened. It seemed like he was kind of more silent than anything, but I noticed in the recap that he had a very audible like scream. You know? I don't know if anyone.
Like that? Like, was it like James Brown? Like, what happened?
Just kind of scared. Like it was noticeable to where I don't remember that happening live while you're watching the episode. It was only in the recap setting you up for this episode.
They like pick him up and he's like, yo, holla at him.
Damn, thug Grogu. See, I'm gonna go to you, man. Can you describe some of the emotions and thoughts that were going through your mind while watching this episode?
Man, I gotta tell you, as far as this episode was concerned, I think this might be the most unambitious episode of the season. And I know
knew the shit was coming.
I mean, but you knew it. But I have rational reasons, man. Like, it's not like I didn't enjoy watching it. Like, I watched the episode and I was like, I've gone on the record as saying this show is consistently good, and I will keep watching it so long as it is consistently good. I mean, you've listened to every episode we have done where I've been on. I have always said I like this show, so long as I know where in the end I had my faith and my trust in Favreau and in Filoni and in secret George Lucas, because he's on the set, helping out, which is good. But this was very unambitious and very safe for me. The emotions I was thinking were more or less along the lines of, I had talked with you, Botter, about this earlier, where like, let's say you and I, we know two people mutually, right? But I don't know. So like, hey, Botter, did you know I knew this one person? You go, oh my God, I know that person. How do you know them? And you say, well, I've been doing this, blah, blah, blah. And usually both of us would say something to the effect of, small world, right? That's exactly how this episode made me feel. Anytime they take and distract us away from the Mandalorian and they make some sort of reference to either the good trilogy or any of the other trilogies, it's like I feel like, all of the effort they put into making this world large, rich, and bountiful and character-driven is kind of undermined by all that. And I look at it and I just go, small world. And I don't say it with vigor. I say it like, small world, I guess, Like it's the opposite of what character-driven world building is. So when I saw what we're going to talk about later, I guess, I was just like, oh no, please don't let it be. No. Because I was like in my mind thinking, what's the worst thing they could do right now? And I kind of called it. And I was like, oh no. Because I don't know. I just felt like it undermined everything. Everything that's happening with Bo-Katan, don't care. Because I just don't. Everything that Moff Gideon turned from being a badass, cool, cold-blooded person to a mustache-twirling bad guy by the end of the episode. Like, don't you want to hurt him? And I was like, no. Like, whoever's writing you clearly hasn't like been paying attention to all the work that's been done for like a season and a half. I don't know, man. Those are the emotions that's been going through my head. And it's weird because I didn't hate the episode. Like, I watched it, I had a good time, but I'm just kind of like, okay, like, I don't care. Don't care, because none of it's character-driven anymore. Like, it's narrative-driven, and that's not the strength of the show.
So just to sort of add to what Cesar was saying is, small world for sure. But that's sort of been during the Skywalker saga. It's like the Force bringing together these groups of people, and that's sort of like a very Star Warsy trope. So I get your gripe. I understand. We want to see the Mandalorian grow, and I do think that this is sort of like a plot point to take Grogu somewhat out of the picture so that we can build on these stories more, because I think that they might have seen the story being put off track by too much like fan service with the cuteness of Grogu and where he was going. So I think in the end that this will pay off to a better storyline.
I hope so.
I don't think that we're going to see Luke that much. I don't, like the deep fake thing was cool for what it was, but I don't think that they can support that.
Did it bother you? Did it
bother me?
Yeah.
So I watched Return of the Jedi the day after I watched it. And more I looked at his face, like he fucking looks sort of weird. And even in Return of the Jedi, like the way that he talks and stuff, it's very serial, like very cheesy.
I was about to say,
So,
I don't have a
didn't
problem.
bother me
Yeah,
the second
I
time.
don't got a problem with it at all. Like everybody complaining, like, no, Luke looked crazy bad. It looks like a fucking like they did with Tarkin and Rogue One. And I was like, no, it doesn't. Like Lars said, like, dude, look at Empire Strikes Back. Look at Return of the Jedi. Homeboy's got a busted ass face. Like he was in a car accident.
They put his scars in there.
He was in a car
I thought it was
accident.
cool.
Yeah.
I thought it was good. Like it's just like, you know, when you watch like a cutscene of a video game and motherfuckers' lips move weird, that's just like little things that happen there. So originally my emotional state was seeing Red 5 and seeing that lightsaber ignite and recognizing Luke's hilt, because that's like my favorite lightsaber in Star Wars, was the one that he built in Return of the Jedi in the cutscene. It's my favorite saber, and I saw that hilt. I knew exactly what was going on. So that scene for somebody like a fan like myself I was excited. I didn't give a fuck. Like to be able to see this juxtaposition of Luke mowing through these dark troopers, similar to Vader mowing through the rebels in Rogue One. Like it was beautiful to me. Like I thought it was dope, and I loved the cut back from the monitor over to the scene where third person view or whatever. But my really emotional reaction was when Din took off his mask and they're looking in each other's eyes and Grogu puts his hand on his cheek, and that shit got me.
Yeah.
Like that's what really got me.
too.
It wasn't necessarily Luke.
Yes,
Yeah, and
absolutely.
I think that that is my feeling about Luke's appearance. It was really cool. I felt like that was a moment in Star Wars. I felt like I was back in 2015 when Force Awakens first hit the theaters, and you're having to avoid social media because some dumbasses are sharing spoilers,
including Mark Hamill himself.
Yeah, Mark fucked up with that. That sucks.
Yeah. So I mean, I felt like I was part of a moment. You know, it felt like the cultural like zeitgeistness of this episode was like felt across everyone. Like, you know, I had to avoid. I even sent like Sia a message like, dude, the only thing people are talking about on social media right now is this Mando episode. Avoid it if you haven't seen it.
That's why we watch them at 9 a.m. on Fridays.
Yeah, but here's what I'll say is, as cool as that fan service moment was, including Luke Skywalker, I did feel like it overshadowed how good this episode was overall. Like to me, this episode had back-to-back really good scenes. Like for me, there just wasn't a weak moment, but I felt like Luke Skywalker's cameo overshadowed the rest of it. Like, 'cause that's all I heard about.
Not to be like a doomsayer. Like I'll offer a fucking solution. Like bring Ahsoka back. You already introduced her into the episode. Was it just for fucking fan service or a trampoline for her own show? Let her come back.
That made me feel cheaper for sure. That she wasn't in this episode, that she was just in that one. It felt like that was a commercial.
Yeah, they already let somebody like Timothy Oliphant that you set up earlier in the first episode show up. And that's very Star Wars tropey too. You know, you meet characters along the way in your journey and it seems like they go their own way and they pass out into the mist and whatever. And then boom, they come back. Like, and they save the day. And this already is a Western, so why not treat it as such? The tension was there when you see the robot, boom, pounding on the door, boom, and like they focus on everybody's face. Slow push on Cara Dune's face, boom. Slow push on the Mando, boom. Like it's all there. They're setting up this tension. And I thought it was a missed opportunity. Like,
but haven't they set up that a Jedi is going to come for several episodes now?
Let Ahsoka come.
Why? Because she already said that she wasn't going to train him. So why would it be Ahsoka?
Because it would be it would be a character arc for her, as opposed to, we just threw her in there. Like there would be an intentional character arc for her. It's not like they would actually treat her with some respect, as opposed to, by the way, guys, remember Luke Skywalker? Hey, we're going to try and repair the structural integrity of this show by cashing in on your nostalgia, as opposed to, don't small world that shit. Let fucking Ahsoka. Dave Filoni created her. Why not just keep going with all this Dave Filoni like universe that he created and just let her come back and be like, I was wrong. I'm growing as a person too. And if you'll still have me, if Grogu will still have me, I would love to train him. And then boom, that would seem to make more sense. But because they're already, I guess, having a show with her and it probably doesn't fit in with that show's storyline, we're not going to see that. We're going to see freaking Luke Skywalker show up and everybody just be like, what?
Blythe, I think it was actually in one of our, I think it might have been like episode 5 or 6, the recap that we did for those episodes. I think you had initially shared a prediction that, Luke Skywalker would show up. So how did it feel to see your prediction come true?
See, I'm on the opposite, completely different opposite. I loved it. I teared up. I thought this was a character that it has established Star Wars as an icon in our fandom and sort of is a beacon of world building for a lot of other franchises that have come since then. And so to be able to see a character like him who was treated very poorly in the sequel trilogy, in my opinion,
You're absolutely right.
To bring him back, to see him in his prime, he's mowing down all of these dark troopers in a moment that you think that there is no hope for this crew to even survive this moment. And even the knowledge that it could possibly be Luke Skywalker coming up, you can see the fear on Gideon's face that he turns into somebody who is like, oh shit, the tables have actually turned. So for me, it was an amazing scene and I was super hype about it, just seeing it all come to fruition. But on the other side, I know that this is something that a lot of diehard Star Wars fans are going to nitpick. And when you look at it from the grand scheme of things, like this entire season, if the main points that you have to like critique the show are like, oh, Ahsoka's tails are not long enough, and it's Luke Skywalker and not somebody else, I feel like this show has so much pressure to live up to, and that when you introduce these moments that we can explore more, we can explore what happened when Luke is starting up his Jedi training academy, because apparently a lot of shit went bad before Ben ever came into the picture. And so you can explore those different realms, and I think that you can have Grogu and you can have, a Luke Skywalker show up for a few minutes during an entire season of a separate show and feel like it makes sense. And for me, that it definitely made sense. It was an exciting moment, and it was cool to see how this particular episode can pull in fans that don't necessarily know a lot about Star Wars, and then also the fans that know a lot about Star Wars. So we can create these little, road or detours off the main road that people can go and explore a little bit more. And I think that sort of speaks to the overall beauty of what this whole season has been about, introducing, the Bo-Katans, the Ahsokas, and now Luke. And those are the moments that I think that bring more fans in, but also help with the dedicated diehard fans.
I'll go ahead and say this about Luke's appearance. Is for me, it blurred the lines between the cinematic universe and the small screen. If we were to call Disney Plus the small screen, I don't think I think we all have played around with the idea of a crossover like this happening. I don't think it was the most surprising thing. I think we've all kind of like thought about, man, this is a
not
possibility.
Beyond the realm of possibility.
Exactly. It's always been a possibility that,
Right.
that you're like, yeah, that probably would happen. But to see it execute was the novelty still, like, I just couldn't prepare myself for the novelty. Like, I will admit, I had a moment of, wow, Luke Skywalker from the fucking movies is in The Mandalorian right now. The fact that this episode already felt like a movie quality episode as far as like production, execution, and all that, and then to the cherry on top being like Luke's cameo, something for me that novelty I think is still important and really cool.
Yeah, I would say this isn't a nitpick for me though. I want to say this is something that I've constantly been talking about. So, and it's always the thing with Star Wars now. The reason why those new movies weren't as good is because they weren't character driven. And as soon as you start going away from the character and letting everything narrative wise go to the foreground, Star Wars will suffer. Star Wars will not be good. And then you have more or less something like I said, I don't have a problem with Luke showing up so much as the fact that I know where it ends up. Like if that new trilogy didn't exist, it would be interesting and new and cool and you can explore and whatever. However, you already know what happens. So it's like, where's the tension? There is none, because either Kylo Ren's going to murk Grogu at some point or something happens, or in which case it's like, oh, but he's not technically a Jedi, so he's not really on their radar. And it's like, oh, fuck, we're doing this shit again. Like, give me a break. Like, not even within the confines of the show, they're doing that. My gripes have never been in reference to the quality of the show or how it's made. It's a well-made show. My gripes have always been, is it character-driven? Is it character-driven? And does everything else play in the background? Everything has to play in service to the characters. And as soon as you start getting away from that and make it narrative-driven, It ain't Lone Wolf and Cub anymore.
I think it opens that door now, right? Because it, like Lars said, it did feel like it was the Baby Yoda show for a long time. And then now, I mean, you even see it in merchandise. All the merchandise is about Grogu and pushing the child, not about the Mandalorian. So I would kind of like piggyback off of that and say that now they can sort of get back to the show title, The Mandalorian. And does that refer to Din? Does that refer to Bo-Katan and her crew? Like, who does it refer to? So I think that they have a lot of possibilities now because they can kind of push him away in a good way, and then allow I guess the option now to focus on the Mandalorian culture.
I want to go to Lars based on something, Blythe, you brought up about Luke training Grogu and also Kylo Ren's inclusion in story arc. Lars, can you tell us if Luke's inclusion in the show or the fact that he's going to train Grogu will have any implications to his continuity or the larger like Skywalker story that we know? Does it make for like significant changes to his story that was introduced in these recent films?
I think it just opens up more storytelling. Like instead of like, you know how Cesar was saying he wished that Ahsoka grabbed him, then it would pigeonhole like the Ahsoka story. Now with Grogu off with Luke, there's this timeline that could be explored. I would put money on it that they're pitching a Ben Solo Grogu Jedi Academy story right now. If not in comic form, in some form or another.
I agree with you.
Like if not in comic form, in some form or another. But to put these things into time perspective, Mandalorian takes place in 9 after Battle of Yavin. And Ben Solo is born in 5 after Battle of Yavin. So at this time, he's like 4 or 5 years old. From what I recall in the Leia book, he was still with Leia, and he was probably about 3 or 4 in the Leia book. And Han was off doing like races in space, like running these weird races. Anyway, so he's about the age, Ben Solo, probably where he would start being trained by Luke.
But again, we're stuck with the idea that not only did Luke know the Empire was back, but did nothing fucking about it.
I think it's also funny that everybody in that room had no idea who Luke Skywalker was.
Like it's like he did shit. Like did he tell anybody? Like and
Are
for
you
God's
a Jedi?
sake, like everything in Return of the Jedi gets undermined. You know, like is the Empire big or is it small? Like what happened? That's why I like the Mandalorian so much because it turned the Empire into, you know, we saw it at the height of its power in the original trilogy. And now in The Mandalorian, they're like this weird fringy cult of like fascists that are trying to get back up. But it's almost kind of pathetic, but they're still dangerous. Like an old snake with venom is still dangerous, right? So like, I love that in the first season where it's like you see there's so many, those possibilities are the ones I want to explore. The character possibilities. Like, what do you do with an old Nazi? Right? Not a young one, but like an old guy who fought for the Empire and now has to hide out because he's the monster that everybody fears. Like Werner Herzog or even those stormtroopers, they got stories too. Why not do a story about those guys? You take the helmet off, they ain't young. They're fucking like in their 50s and they're like white supremacists. You know what I mean? Like they're scary. Like you saw that
dude. What Magneto did. You bore a fucking coin in their foreheads.
That's what I'm saying. That's what The Mandalorian should be. It should be exploring those kind of stories and like make it character driven where like this is the beauty of the show was, because I don't know if it's that anymore. I'm disillusioned now. The beauty of the show was if there was a rock and that rock was called Star Wars and you lifted that shit up and all the squirmy little worms and bugs underneath the rock were like the world of The Mandalorian, that's what that shit could be. And I don't think it's that no more. It just seems to be more like what The Walking Dead kind of turned into, where it's just kind of like, I mean, if I miss an episode, I guess I'll be fine, you know?
So I want to pivot from Luke Skywalker and that portion and kind of go back a little bit and go to UC, because I think we've both specifically championed on multiple occasions the father-son relationship between Grogu and Din and how the latter is growing into this father figure role. I think it's to say we both were anticipating Din's unmasking to Grogu, but sure. I was curious to hear, what did you think about the scene, about the payoff? You know, Din unmasking to Grogu. Did it have the same emotional impact, or was it lessened at all due to the fact that we did get, you know, this reveal in last week's episode?
I 100% think it was lessened. 100%. It still made me feel emotional. Like I still was like, that's cute, but I wish you would have fucking saved that shit for now, because the stakes were higher. The stakes were not high at fucking all when Mayfeld and and the Mandalorian were trying to get the fucking ATM to work. You know, like those stakes. Like I said, he could have. Look, I'm not even a fucking director or screenwriter in any regard, but I could have at least come up with a way creatively to be like, all right, step into the shadows, take off my mask. You still haven't seen my face. Do what you got to do. You know, but they didn't do that shit. And it completely undermined the emotion of the scene because it was so good. Everyone's looking at him, right? Everybody's looking at him. Like, they're like, what are you going to do? This little boy wants to see your face. What do you want to do? You going to just sit there? You going to make this little boy sad? Come on. What are you going to do? And he fucking just does it. He's like, takes the mask off. And we see Pedro Pascal's busted ass face. And little Grogu just, like, you know, rubs his cheek. I was like, that's cute. Like, that was good. Like, I was like, yes, more of this. This is what we need. Which also, by the way, I watched that scene with a couple people, and they have a daughter who I think might be 10, maybe 9 years old. And when Grogu goes off with Luke, she just started crying. Like, she's like, are we not going to see him again? Oh. Like, what's happening? And I'm like, yeah, Grogu ain't going nowhere. He's going to be in season 3. Like, they're not that dumb.
He's
like,
going to be in all these other, you know, dozens of series. He's going to be like their pinch hitter.
I'm calling it. He's going to be in season 3.
I think he'll be on multiple shows.
Yeah,
and I think that's the point of like taking him away is making him.
Din does say, you know, I will see you again. And I thought Pedro Pascal absolutely delivered as far as like acting wise.
He's great.
Man, like, yo, talk
that
about
poor
like
face has been through so much.
You talking about Game of Thrones?
Yes.
He smushed his head like a fucking
And then he's getting
cantaloupe.
pounded into the face by the Dark Trooper. I'm like, goodness gracious.
That's why his face looks busted.
The fact that he's acting against a you know, for the most part a puppet. And still was able to like deliver such a heartfelt, emotional goodbye. I thought that was worth noting, especially because I think there was a lot of, you know, I think there was some form of pressure or expectation for how he was going to live up to this scene. And I'm kind of in the same boat with C. I think as good as that scene was this episode, I think it still got, you know, it pulled my heartstrings. But I think, man, I couldn't help but think, man, had we not seen his face last episode, this would be 10 times even more impactful. And I think if for the most part, it just made me kind of nitpick last week's reveal a lot more, in addition to what I already had mentioned. But still, I found that Pedro Pascal absolutely delivered on that scene a lot.
He's a pro.
I could also argue that it makes him more comfortable with removing his face mask. So he could have, you know, these several episodes where he doesn't have the mask on and he's slowly coming to grips with getting more comfortable with revealing it.
Blythe, what outstanding or new questions or plot points introduced in this episode do you want to see carried over or answered in future seasons? Can you give us like one or two?
I think one, but you guys aren't going to like it. But Grogu leaving to train with Luke, I really want to see a lot of that. I love that kind of stuff. So I would love to be able to see any kind of like spinoffs or whatever, even if it's like a limited series run of any kind of storytelling in that regard.
Why?
I love Grogu and I love Luke, so it just kind of makes sense.
Like, what is it about the show that excites you? Like, what would you want to see?
I think that more of the lore and seeing Luke in his prime and being able to train other Jedis, I think that that's one, especially with the other sequel trilogy, that was a lot of the missing information that I would have wanted to see. I would have wanted to see the Jedi Training Academy and how they rebuilt that from the ashes of what his father did. And so now seeing, you know, Luke take on that fatherly role to maybe several other little Jedi students or future Jedi, I think that would be a really appealing to me. I don't know if that's something that can just sort of live on its own, but it is something that I would love to see, like maybe even like a limited series run.
So you want to see like Indiana Jones in a Temple of Doom, like Grogu's got like a little Yankees hat and he's like, Mr. Luke, no time for love.
I think I don't know what's going to happen with Grogu, and I think that sort of if we sort of lean on the sequel trilogy, I don't think it's going to end in a good way. But I do think that the story of how they retrain and how they rebuild the Jedi Academy is fascinating to me. But I'm also from the perspective of that I don't mind exploring all of these different storylines and taking all of these different detours. I love it all. I want to see it all. So for me, that was one of the bigger plot points. Also, I hinted to this earlier, but the contention that's building between Bo-Katan and Din Djarin. I think that is something that's Din is almost in a role of like Jon Snow in Game of Thrones, where he doesn't want the power, he doesn't want the responsibility, and he's willing to give that over. But you have Gideon off in the side trying to hype up a battle between the two of them, and you have Bo-Katan, who seems like a very easy heroine, but then when you look at it from another perspective, she says earlier in the episode, like, oh, you'll never find Moff Gideon. So why is she sitting in that bar? Has she kind of like given up?
Yeah, let me also interject, and Lars can back me up on this. That bullshit about the saber being transferred by battle is horse hog fucking shit, because Sabine just gave her the fucking saber. Sabine's the one that wanted in combat. She's the one that fucking won it, and she was like, here you go. Now, whether they did it because it was a kid's show and they couldn't, whatever, I don't know. But as soon as I saw that, by the way, guys, you need to watch Rebels.
Was that, is that the setup? You and Lars
just saying, you need to watch Rebels. I was like, what the fuck is this bullshit about? And then earlier when she's like, not all Mandalorians wear the fucking mask all the time. Okay, so let me understand this correctly. Bo-Katan, who I give no shits about. You can bend the rules when it's okay for you, but then suddenly you develop some of this weirdo bad plot point where she's like, it's true, I have to win it in combat. And the Mandalorian's looking at her like, motherfucker, my mask is off right now. I took my mask off, and you can't just fucking take a little sword? Get fucked.
And then she's also standing in the cockpit for the entire time while Din is off fighting. It's like, what the fuck are you doing?
I was gone for an hour. I was gone for an hour, guys.
I have no interest in her at all.
See, I think she's a little. I'm interested just because I think there's a lot of complexity to her. Why is she this way now, and then she's another way in another part of the season? So I feel like she's a little bit more complex and not necessarily cookie cutter. So I would love to see her justification.
Just watch BSG, Battlestar Galactica.
Oh,
there you go. You got it. It's all there.
BSG.
Lars, I want to go and shift gears and talk about the other big kind of moment this episode that a lot of people were talking about. In addition to Mark Hamill returning as Luke Skywalker and us getting that cameo, the Boba Fett post-credit scene and the announcement that we got about the Book of Boba coming December 2021. And I wanted to hear from you. What are some of your predictions or best guesses on what the Book of Boba show will cover?
I can only go off really what they gave us, which was him sort of taking the seat as the crime lord of Tatooine. Like, what that's about all that they gave us. Like, or was he clearing the scum out of there? But he sat at the throne. Like, that's his now. So it made me think that he's the new bad guy of Tatooine. And maybe we don't see a redemption story.
Yeah, I was going to say, so he didn't learn anything?
Huh?
He didn't learn anything then.
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Like, it might be misdirection, but that's what they gave us, was him clearing the throne and sitting on top of it. And like, and the way that I forget her name, she grabbed the spatchka and sat at his side. Seemed like they're both like, fuck this. Yeah, we got where we want to be, and this is who we are, is real scum and villainy, like. I
heard a good point though, that she let the slave girl go. She didn't shoot and kill her. So maybe it was a situation where...
Only to have her fall into the same system that she fucking supports by being a crime lord. And then have her fucking fall into human trafficking again, so that way she can make money
maybe
off
it's like
her.
a justified crime lord.
Do you know how many people hit me up and was like, yo, don't forget to stay for the post-credit? I was like, yo, there's no way that I would have skipped the credits, because I was in such an emotional, like, wow. I was like still like collecting my emotions. By the time I got done, that's when the Boba Fett scene kind of came in. But that was kind of cool to see, like, everyone's like sharing that, like, yo, stay for the post credit. And we're not in movies, we're not at a theater. So I thought that was pretty cool.
My prediction is that the Book of Boba Fett won't actually be a book.
That's
no.
That's my prediction. Fuck that title, The Book of Boba Fett. No, it's not written word. It's not printed. There's no credibility added to that just because you say The Book of Boba Fett. No,
that makes it sound like it's going to be more of a life story, and we're going to get to see more of what happened.
Yeah, you got to earn that shit.
I haven't seen Cesar, like this since our
Since we saw Last Jedi together.
Yeah, since Last Jedi. Yo, C is in rare form today, man. Boy, I'm loving it.
Since I think it was another YouTuber had mentioned something that because the Book of Boba Fett and the Mandalorian, there were a lot of confusion over if it's going to be the same show or if Boba Fett is now taking over for the Mandalorian. And I heard an interesting theory that this could be something that is just played at the end, is small short stories that are played at the end of Mandalorian, because they're both supposed to premiere around the same time. So I wonder how, if they're not going to be shown together, how they're going to sort of play that out, I guess, release wise. Are they going to release on the same day, the same time frame?
I will give them
Could
credit.
be a cool idea.
Yeah, I will give them credit that they were able to keep such big moments under wraps and secrecy. You know, the fact that Mark Hamill returned as Luke Skywalker, and that they didn't announce Boba Fett among the array of announcements we got, last week at the Investor Day. Like the fact that they
good
keep
marketing.
so
They
much
were
things-
able to keep it secret so long as you don't follow Mark Hamill on Instagram. So long as you don't follow him on
Yeah.
Instagram.
Which is why I think he was so excited about it, because they apparently have been keeping the secret for a year. So he lets it fly
He's
on
like, oh,
release
wait,
date.
you guys are going to fucking do me right this time? Shit.
At like 11
I'm about
a.m.
to
on
let it be
release
known.
day.
I'm about to fucking tell everybody, yo, I'm back, son.
All right,
I'm back.
let's take a look at the season as a whole and see. I'll go to you. What's the biggest or most significant improvement this season compared to season one? And is there anything that maybe season one executed better than this season, whether it be theatrically or thematically? What do you think?
Season one's fucking almost perfect, man. Fucking almost flawless. It's beautiful. It made the world larger. It created and I think everyone knows, I had my reservations about this first season of The Mandalorian before it even came out. Like, I was like, oh man, what the fuck? Man, what do we need a fucking show about this shit? And then it was like, they went, because at this point, Star Wars is like a monster in an 80s slasher film, right? You could fucking knock it with a hammer and slash it, and it's just gonna come back up and keep chasing you like Jason from Friday the 13th, and it's gonna do the same thing every fucking time. Where like The Mandalorian was like a breath of fresh air, and I was like, oh damn it, like this is the new hope right here. Like this shit's amazing, it's good, and they were doing it like 1970s Star Wars, right? Like it was like George Lucas and his buddies are making a small film, and they're trying to do this little project, and it's done with like a group of craftsmen, and they're all trying to make it get off the ground. And it was good. And it was all mostly, for the most part, character driven. We didn't see too much fan service in the first season. Like it wasn't like, okay. The second season, I think it got a little flabby in the midsection. Like it went a little dumpy, like right after the Frog Lady, where it was like, all right, now we're introducing Ahsoka, now we're introducing Bo-Katan, and now we're putting them in the show, which I had, if you listen, I had no problem with, so long as it's character driven and it pays off. It was not character driven and it did not pay off, and the only way it will is if it's like, hey, smash that like button, watch every fucking other show, little kid. Open your mouth. Here comes the fire hose. Like, you're going to get a Star Wars movie every 5 minutes for the rest of your goddamn life. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, am I going to watch season 3? Sure. But I'm not going to be like, fucking can't wait, man. Like the first season, every episode was like, woo, I can't wait. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. And this season, it was kind of like, they might, we'll see where this goes. We'll see where this goes. And then it's like season 3, I'm just like,
I think what's unique about Star Wars compared to like other franchises is that there's so many things to explore, and it could feel like, compared to like Lord of the Rings, they have essentially one timeline, one planet, one land that they're exploring the intricacies of different species and their histories and how they all play together. And even, Harry Potter and other franchises, they have that limited space to work with. Star Wars has different planets and different histories and different species and the known world, the unknown world. It's so many things to explore. But at the same time, I still love to get that familiarity and still to be slowly introduced to these other characters, because I'm not the fan that's gone off and read all of the comics and read, and so it's one of those things where I love that they connect the worlds together, but then they also leave that room to now get back to just the focus of the Mandalorian. So I think that they might have realized the issue that they have on their hands with this cute ass little, baby Yoda, and they kind of got to wrap that up. And I thought that they did that pretty well this season, to where now it's like, okay, I'm comfortable with this story. I'm comfortable with where it's going in the future. But maybe to C's point, maybe it's time to get a little bit more uncomfortable with Star Wars.
Gotta fucking talk to Cesar about this shit. I'm sorry. Listen, man, if you don't want these connections and these coincidences,
I didn't say that.
You gotta get out of the Skywalker saga.
I didn't say that. I didn't say I don't want. I didn't say I don't want the connections. I'm saying make it character driven.
I'd say my biggest suggestion to you is when this High Republic shit comes out at the beginning of the year, put it on your pull list. Try the first couple issues, because these are all brand new stories in the past. Continuity is not an issue. Amazing writers getting to deal with this new timeline. I think that sounds like, from a lot of your issues of things, it might be where you'd be. I don't know. You might flourish in that timeline. I think it might be cool, because they're not going to just deal with when the Jedi were at their highest. They're going to deal with the Sith coming back into picture and deal with like the scum of the galaxy at that time that were a little more wild than they are currently now.
I got no problem with that, man. I mean, I read some of the comics. Like, if I like them, I'll read them. But I'm only talking about the live action stuff right now. That's all I'm saying. I have no problem. Looking that up. I actually,
but being that the live action stuff is supposed to be so accessible to like the biggest fanboy, and then like the random scroller,
somebody like my wife,
it has to be recognizable as Star Wars to these people that have maybe seen maybe the original trilogy or only seen the prequels. It has to be something recognizable to them. But my comparison, season 1 and season 2, I don't pretend to be a film critic. I am just a fanboy. So I enjoy all of it. I try to be critical in things, but I just enjoy it, man. I'm having a great time. Star Wars is in my life, and it's in my life a lot lately, and it makes life worth living.
Said, let's start wrapping up here. I want to hear from all of you guys, but I'll start out with Blythe. How would you rate this episode on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being a perfect score? And out of all 8 episodes we got this season, what are your top 2 favorite episodes?
Okay, so this final episode, I'm going to give it a 10 out of 10. For me, I was trying to think of ways to knock it down a little bit. The only, I guess, real reasons I could is where was the other random Mando dude? Where did he go? Part of Bo-Katan's crew?
Where did Boba Fett go? Why didn't he fucking shoot the fucking?
Because it would have created a plot hole, because Luke fucking sliced Boba's jetpack and sent him in the Sarlacc pit.
Sure, no, I'm saying outside the ship, he could have shot those death troopers. You know what I'm saying? He just fucking bounced. I would have accepted him saying, "I brought you this far, and that's that." And I'm like, okay, he's kind of a bastard. That makes sense. But it was nope, pew, left. I'm like, plot hole.
So yeah, that was definitely a moment where I'm just nitpicking a little bit. But then as far as when I look at the entire episode and what it does for the fandom and what it does for new people coming in, I thought that it did a brilliant job of trying to sew up some of the major criticisms of the sequel trilogy with, talking about the cloning and what they're going to do with Grogu's DNA and how that sort of ties together with the sequel trilogy, and then bringing in Luke and sort of in his prime. I thought that paid homage to the original trilogy. We're getting a few more answers from the sequel trilogy, and then we're also getting the new storyline of what the show title is all about, The Mandalorian, and what's going to happen to the future of that creed and to Bo-Katan and her claim to the throne, and I thought that it sets up the entire season, set up multiple different shows, and then now we can kind of get back to what the show title is all about. So 10 out of 10 for me. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's very rare that, sort of a show like this makes me cry, and it definitely made me cry. And I've enjoyed the entire season. A few things that I could nitpick, but this episode was a 10 out of 10 for me, and I thought the Ahsoka episode was a 10 out of 10 for me because this was a character that has been hyped up for so long. We've never seen her in live action. As a Star Wars fan that never watched the Clone Wars or Rebels, it was one of those things. I always heard about that character, but to see her come to life, I thought that they nailed it, and I thought that particular episode made me super excited for her series. So knowing that, those are my top 2 episodes, and I couldn't find a way to ding it a little bit, except for like those minor things. But even then, it feels super minor to complain about that when overall the expectation and the experience was incredible.
Lars, has your top 2 episodes changed at all with the inclusion of the season finale?
Yeah, I mean, I think the season finale is in there. I'd probably give it like a 9 out of 10 or 9.5 out of 10. I enjoyed it. I thought that I did not care for the post-credit scene. You know, it was cool, but like I really expected like seeing Thrawn step out from the shadows and his like, you know, wherever the hell he is. That would have been way more rewarding to the storyline to me than another commercial, which is essentially what that was, Jesus Christ. Yeah, you're right. So that's my gripe with it. You know, then there's obviously the Bo-Katan Darksaber stuff that is definitely weird because of Sabine and what Cesar mentioned, but I sort of made some kind of logic out of it, being that most likely Bo-Katan lost it in battle somehow to Moff Gideon during, I'm guessing, the purge that they've spoken about a bunch, and that maybe her only way of honorably carrying it again was beating him in return to be able to hold it again with respect. Anyway, that and the Ahsoka episode, they're my favorite still. So, yeah.
All right. So what about you, man? Top 2 favorite episodes this season?
You know, guys, and I say guys, I mean Botter and Blythe.
Sure.
Both of you keep talking about, you know, these new shows coming out. Can't wait to get around. I want to wrap my brain around the Star Wars universe. Yet you fucking haven't watched Rebels yet. So don't talk that shit unless you watch 5 seasons of the sweetest show outside the movies. That's not an exaggeration.
I do have it planned after this season was over.
You want to talk about crying? You're going to cry.
Blythe, delete your fucking YouTube app off your phone and find some time to watch this shit. Don't talk about watching YouTube recap videos all the time. Just watching their episodes.
Listen to my boy Lars.
They recap all of it for me and they give me context and
No. Don't let people think for you. Watch Rebels.
No. That's why I watch several different people and listen to several different things, and then I form my own opinion.
Lars's head is about to explode.
No, literally. This is a really good filter, by the way.
Sorry, what was the question?
Top 2 episodes.
I've been sitting on that for a long time.
That was good.
Top 2 episodes this season. I'm going to say, you know, the first episode and this episode with Miggs, because that's the one where they actually were fucking character driven. Those are the best ones. Like, people that don't know fucking shit about Star Wars could watch both those episodes and be like, not a fucking lightsaber was drawn. Not a damn fucking anything else. Like, it's Star Wars adjacent. It worked. There's good stories. And I don't know. I think those both get 10 out of 10 for me. And I think they honestly carried the show because everything else is just built and resting upon fan service.
I do love that scene still with the 3 of them sitting at the table from last week's episode. The more I think about it, it's one of the better scenes in all of Star Wars.
It's what makes Inglourious Bastards good. It's what makes fucking Django Unchained good. Yeah. Like, they have similar scenes in both of those movies. Like, it's the Mexican standoff, but with words instead of guns, you know? Everybody's doing this, but like, they're all like doing it with their mouths, you know? So that's the thing is that fan service will be gone. It'll be dross. It'll be dust in the wind. It will not last. But so long as the show is built on character shit, like, what does everybody remember from Star Wars, right? It's not like, oh, that fucking AT-AT Walker was so cool. Did you notice how its fucking feet just smushed an Ewok? No. What they remember is, Luke, I am your father. You know? All that shit is there. You know, like, I know that's not the line. I'm just saying that's the power of it, right? Like, it resonates with people on a character level. You can relate to it. That's where you should be putting your chips in, and that's what I want to see. So both those episodes did that, and I think a lot of people are going to talk about, like, oh yeah, I'm interested in Miggs and all that stuff. So I don't know, man. What do you think, Botter? You know, I love how Botter is like this like creepy ringmaster. Like he's always like, yes, I'll pit these people against each other. You're like fucking Moff Gideon, dude. You're just sitting there with your cape and you're fucking judging us and you're looking at us and you're looking at Lars and you're thinking like, yeah, Lars, what do you think? Now see, what do you think? And I'm like, dude, what do you think, Botter? How about that? I want to know what you think.
That is a very villainous view of my role on this show.
Anyone that's look. First off, when you say that, hold on. When you say that, make sure you don't laugh like a supervillain after you say it, okay?
Yeah,
because you literally just proved every point I just made. He's like, I mean, I'm not a villain.
Yeah, he's stupid.
Laughing like Denzel on Training Day, man.
All right. My thoughts on I'd rate this episode a 10. I felt like this was a movie quality work just from the production, the look, the execution. I felt like it was back-to-back really good scenes from that intro to the bar where Bo-Katan and Boba Fett have their one-on-one. The mission layout scene, getting like Dr. Pershing chiming in, docking the Imperial cruiser, watching the scout team do their thing.
Oh, the TIE fighters coming out. That was a great shot.
Like there was so many good moments in this. And I'll go and say I like to take into account the impact that a show like this has on the larger fan base. And if it has the ability, like this episode did, to make me feel like I'm part of a moment for the right reasons. You know, it's always going to be a factor that boosts the score for me. And add that logic to already a fundamentally strong episode with so many superb scenes. I think this, I will go and say that this is the best episode because it felt like how a season finale should be. I felt like there's a lot of cool moments. And you know, they set things up as well. So I'll probably say this is probably my top one because of the novelty. I think the novelty has a large impact on why I think this is the best one. But my very close second follow-up would be last week's The Believer, just because it was, I felt like the acting shined. I felt like the themes they wanted to cover like shined the most. There was very limited to no fan service at all. It was just like a really good body of work. It was like art. It was like, wow, okay, this is what they can do when they decide, all right, man, forget about this being a Star Wars show. We just want to give this the best product that we possibly can. And I thought, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that Bill Burr's acting, like I hit up C after we recorded last week's episode, maybe 30 minutes afterwards, because I rewatched the episode real quick. And it's still impressive. Like, damn, Bill Burr brought his A game on top of everyone else, you know, Pedro Pascal and Van Hess as well. Like, it was just a beautiful, like everything just seemed to be a fine-tuned machine. So
it's a well-written episode.
Absolutely. And I want to say something about this episode I haven't had a chance to chime in with, but I want to give a lot of praise, to the composer Ludwig Göransson. Is that how you say his name?
Oh, yeah. He's great.
He composed the musical score for this episode, and I think a majority of this season, if not the whole series.
Yeah.
As well as the cinematography by Barry Baz Eidoine. I think that's how you say his last name. There was some beautiful shots that were married with like some spectacular
the Dark Troopers
scores.
With their hype music. Like that was legit.
Yeah, unlike Robert Rodriguez's episode where he fucking shot in his backyard.
Yo, like, yeah. Like,
see the difference, Butter?
No, I will say, yes. An episode like this, yeah, compared to that, I'm like, okay, yeah, the shots in this, like some of the ones I have, for example, like when Mando was exiting the ship after they landed and, you know, he was walking kind of among like all the bodies that the ladies had left them. There is a really good interpolation of the theme song. And I think we got a few like different, remixes, quotation, of the theme song throughout this episode. And every single one felt fresh and impactful. It's literally the same song, but the way that it's composed, like tweaked and differently, like it was spectacular.
If the score is done right, it's a character in the show as well.
Dude.
True.
And Blythe mentioned anytime the Dark Trooper showed up, especially when they returned from the void of space, like it was a weird, like high energy, like just kind of score.
You couldn't tell if it was a sound effect or if it was the music.
Like the power of their steps, you could feel it.
And even down to Luke's score, which I believe is what's the name of his score? Isn't it like the Twin Sons of Tatooine?
Binary Star.
Okay. Yeah. Like down to that, and even the credits.
Thank you, Binary Sunset. Thank you, Lars.
I think even the credits had a really heartfelt score. Like it was like a perfect, like a capstone or a cherry on top from an emotional. After dealing with all this emotion and cameo, I even the credits was a joy to watch because I was like, man, this music right now is exactly how I'm feeling. Very somber, very reflective,
and no art either. So I thought that was really interesting that they didn't have any art at the end of this episode.
Because somebody would have fucking snagged that shit and put it on Google Images in a heartbeat.
Or done like me and put in iMovie for a trailer for this episode.
Oh, my God.
So I will say, I'll just recap and say this episode was a 10 out of 10 because of just the production and the execution. I thought, the Luke Skywalker cameo was really cool. It was a moment. Like, it was a moment for Star Wars. Like I said in the beginning, it felt like 2015 where everyone was talking about Star Wars and you were having to avoid social media. There was like a buzz and an energy in the air about it. It was cool. I like living in those moments of pop culture. Like years from now, it'll probably be a moment of, hey, where were you when Luke Skywalker showed up in Mando? Like for me, that's cool to kind of live in. So I'll say this 10 out of 10, but I will say that I like this episode not because of Luke or the announcement for Boba, but because it was such a strong episode. And even if it had been spoiled, if someone would have been like, hey, yo, Luke Skywalker shows up this episode, I don't think it would have impacted my score. This episode was that good to me. It was like, man, high energy, octane. It was like tense from the beginning all the way through. There was like a sense of purpose and very laser focused like mission. It felt like a rescue. And I will say that is one, I felt like all of their episodes have been titled accordingly, sometimes a little too spot on the nose, but this felt like I was watching I literally was. I felt like, man, this is a rescue mission. Like there is some high stakes going on right now and they've got to do what they got to do. So that's what I'll say about this. All right. Well, guys, look, it has been a pleasure being able to come here for the last 8 weeks and talk about such an excellent show for you three. I want to give Adam Wallet and Ashley Lane and Hoy a shout out as well for their contributions to these episodes and the earlier ones that we were doing. And I'd like to give each of you a chance to tell the listeners where they can follow you going forward, or if you want to plug any projects or other podcast related stuff. Go ahead and feel free to shamelessly plug, since this is our last installment of our Mandalorian season recap. Blythe, how about you kick us off? Okay. Shameless plugs.
For me, I am actively where I pay my bills is digitaldispatch.io. It's a logistics marketing agency. So if anybody is in trucking or logistics, hit me up at digitaldispatch.io. Also, you can find my personal social channels where I talk about Star Wars more frequently is on Twitter at Blythe Brum.
All right, Lars, what about you, man? If people want to hear more of your Star Wars takes and whatnot, where can people follow and stay in
filter? That filter's killing me right now.
Yeah, I can't take it seriously.
I guess you could just look at my stories on Instagram. I post about stuff all the time, but if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's Lars_IR, as in Inksmith Rogers. I work for Inksmith and Rogers Tattoo Company that's been out of Jacksonville since 1984. So if you want Star Wars tattoos, I'm your fucking guy. Past that, I'm going to try to convince Botter to let me do some High Republic stuff when that comes out, so we could talk about that. Maybe I could pop in, let y'all know what's going on with that. But that's really it for me.
I think I've definitely found my permanent panel for all Star Wars related things if we do decide to do more of these recaps.
Hold on. Also, like every artist in true form on this show, they're very humble people and they don't plug themselves. Lars is a very accomplished artist as well. Like, he basically was like, yo, if you want Star Wars tattoos, I'm your guy. Check out his fucking Instagram. He always posts pictures that are, and I don't like them enough. Like, he's got some legit artwork out there. So please, it's Lars IR, right?
Lars_IR.
Yeah, please check him out. He's fucking legit.
Appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah, man. It's not lip service.
All right, listeners, this is the end of not only today's episode, but it's also the end of our Mandalorian recap series. Now it's your turn to chime in and tell us what you thought about this week's Mandalorian episode. Let us know what was your standout moment from the finale or favorite episode from the season. We want to know. Give us something to read next week by sending us a short email at theshortboxjacks@gmail.com or hit us up on social media. I personally want to acknowledge and thank the people who made this episode possible. Our sponsor, Gotham City Limit, and my panel today, Blythe, Lars, and Cesar. Thank you guys so much. And special recognition goes out to our Patreon subscribers who help us keep the lights on here at the Shortbox Studio. If you enjoyed the podcast and you're in a position to support the show with a small donation, consider becoming a Shortbox patron. We'll reward you with bonus episodes and other perks. Visit patreon.com/theshortbox to find out more. Thanks again for tuning in. You could be listening to any other podcast, but you're here with us, and that means a lot. In regard to future recap series, we'll probably let our patrons decide what show and series they want us to cover next. I'm thinking WandaVision might be a good one, but...
Sowing them seeds early, huh? Wow.
Hints.
You know what seeds I would like to sow? Maybe Loki, maybe WandaVision.
But we're open to suggestions.
So long as they're Marvel.
So we'll see what happens next. All right. In the meantime, have a great week, everyone, and continue to make mine and yours Shortbox. May the Force be with you.